Season 2 of Squid Game is now streaming on Netflix after a 3-year wait. The last one was in September 2021. A lot's happened since then, but it doesn't feel like Squid Game ever really left the pop culture dais in that entire time, actually. Because I feel like every other opportunity that arises to bring up Squid Game, it did. It came to a point where you couldn't stop hearing about Squid Game, with even the most popular people taking it on. There's constant references to it. Red light, green light became a huge thing for a moment there. And then, of course, the biggest YouTuber, Mr. Beast, recreated his own version of Squid Game of sorts, and then now he's even doing a game show that you could say was loosely sort of inspired by that. So much has sort of been made in that time that Season 2 coming out right now, it feels like a long time has passed, and yet it feels like once again we're back in that cultural moment. This starts a few years after the end of that first season, in fact, where we once again follow Gi-hun, played by jung-jae, who was trying to figure out who these people are who run this game and hopefully just shut down the entire thing. After witnessing the deaths of all of the other contestants when he did his run and he won the 45.6 billion won. But this also involves potentially going back into the games, and that's exactly what Gi-hun does. He enters back with a bunch of new contestants this time, and hopefully this will lead him closer to eventually breaking it apart from the inside. It's kind of hard to try and do what the first season did, because it's hard to sort of top that or to recreate that exact thing. That was such a specific cultural thing that, that moment in time, that every single thing that first season did, you cannot possibly create that novelty again. And so going into Season 2, that's obviously going to be a concern, but I think what's so smart about Season 2 is that it doesn't even try to do that. We get a lot more time with characters and dealing with the stuff that they're going through in terms of their backgrounds, in terms of what's happening that's led to them being in this game in the first place, and sort of seeing that entire story play out. And I think what you eventually get over here is something that is a little more poignant and a little more interesting in its character explorations. Is it as good as Season 1 was? Not quite. It is a hair below that, I would say, but I think where it lacks in terms of some of the, maybe the pacing and in terms of, keeping some of the intensity, it makes up for that with, again, some great performances and some really intriguing stuff going on behind the scenes when it comes to these characters. And that includes both sides, not just the players, but also those guards who are working at the game facility. And you get a brief insight into some of that as well with one of those guards as you're seeing her recruitment process, go the whole way. And you get a very interesting storyline out of that. And I really like what they did over there. I thought that was one of the more interesting aspects of it. As far as the players go, there are some interesting storylines over there as well. There's some stuff going on, especially when it comes to this mother and son who are in this game and they had no idea they were in here. Like when the son enters in and he sees his mom and is like, okay, well, I guess we have to make it through this together now. And their storyline is also one that you're very invested in and you want to see it through to the end, even though the games are getting increasingly more tense. The games are not entirely the same either. Obviously, the first one is red light, green light. It immediately sets out the gate what you're going to expect from this. And it's a very tense sequence once again. And since Gi-hun has done this before, seeing him try to navigate everyone through the game so that nobody dies, but, trying to do that to mixed results maybe because not everybody believes him at first, that's very, very tense. Seeing him try to lead everyone through it with the warning that this is not just some game. Something very bad is going to happen if you don't take this seriously. That entire sequence is incredibly suspenseful, and they did a great job with that. But actually, the first couple of episodes where you're outside the games and where he's trying to find out, it's like, for example, the man in the suit played by Gong-yu, he's trying to figure out where this man is and, how he can track him down, eventually leading him to the games. That entire episode as well is very interesting, and eventually when you do get to that man, those moments with him where he is just become this absolutely, painless sadist of sorts who is just making the most messed up things happen, including a very twisted game of rock, paper, scissors at one point of time, and then Russian roulette. It's incredibly well executed. It in fact leads to one of my favorite scenes in the entire series between that man and Gi-hun as they're talking to each other about just, the idea of all this, the point of everything that they've been doing. And so, again, some great stuff over there. The other games that you get, especially this one where they all have to like hold each other and go across a circle in 5 minutes and do various games and, make it out of there, okay? Very enthralling stuff, and there's some great team dynamics that come out of that. Mingle is the one that eventually becomes very suspenseful. That's something towards the end of the season, which I really, really liked. But much like the first season, there is a dynamic between Gi-hun and another player. And in this case, that is the front man himself, played by Lee Byung-hun, who is obviously someone you know from the first season. And this is not really a major spoiler. This is something that is revealed very early on. He is also participating in the games undercover, seeing how it's all playing out, especially with the knowledge of what Gi-hun is trying to do in trying to let other people survive, through these entire proceedings. And the dynamic that builds between him with the rest of the players, it's one that is going to lead to something which is not particularly great, because obviously that's the main leader. That's the guy who is running this whole show. And yet at the same time, there is this sense of camaraderie to it where you feel like maybe, just maybe, you're understanding, the desperation of certain things, because every now and then you see that he is caught up in these games and there is a suspenseful factor to it. It's like, what if I make a wrong move? Then what happens? And just that idea of it is also something that is, driving him through some of those moments. Even though, again, he knows how these things work. But I do like the fact that the show plays around with a little bit of that. Visually, the show, once again, is remarkable. This is a fantastic production across the board. The great score from jung-jae once again, which is very, very intense. And the violence and action that proceeds is pretty great. It does take a minute to pick up the entire season. Like, the games itself don't start out the gate, but eventually as it gets going and you have those sequences, they're very well done. And eventually when it builds to a very intense season finale where everybody is basically just out to kill each other, whether it's the team that is voting to stay in the games versus the one that is voting against that is also very, very well done. And again, I like those aspects of the season quite a bit. You got some standout characters as a result even over there. One of them being a rapper whose name is Thanos. And he very much does embody a lot of, the aspects of that character every now and then, especially when it comes to his appearance and stuff. Like, he's got nail colors that are of the Infinity Stones, and he definitely tries to make up rhymes that match, snapping half the universe out. So in a way, it sort of plays out as the best Infinity War spin-off, which you didn't think was ever going to happen. Speaking of Infinity War, though, this is very much the Infinity War kind of storyline, in that it also puts everybody in a moment of time where the action is still ongoing, the villains have the upper hand, and the heroes are very desperate and are losing towards the end of the season. And it ends very abruptly on that cliffhanger, especially as eventually the frontman stops being undercover and just, lets the slip happen on every player who is trying to get out of there and revolt against the whole thing. And yeah, that is, again, something that can be frustrating, especially if you're somebody who has waited for a closed story to happen right after, this long wait. You're not going to get that with season 2. Overall, while there's a lot that I really, really liked about it, there were things that I did not. Mostly when it came to a couple of subplots on the side, like the structuring of the season can be a little frustrating at times. Maybe the one thing that I would say could have been done a little better is the police storyline over here. There is an aspect of it where the frontman's brother, he was shot, in the first season. He's on the lookout for the island once again. He's trying to find out where these games are happening. And the entire storyline with him as they're trying to find that is not super compelling, at least not after a while. It is a little bit early on, but there's still a lot more to go with that. I'm assuming that eventually when season 3 comes around, there's going to be a lot more payoff to that, but as of right now, it doesn't really do much. There are also other things going on with side characters who are introduced as players in the game who get some time to shine, but then eventually the plot lines don't really go anywhere. But then that's kind of what they're trying to, go with, like, this thing that anyone can die at any moment of time. So I think in that sense it does work. At least that's my opinion on it. I am curious to hear what everybody else thinks. But I have seen some of the reactions to season 2 so far, and I can see that a lot of people are all over the place on it. And I kind of understand that. I totally get where that's coming from. For my money's worth though, I was very overall satisfied with season 2. I don't think it's, again, as great as season 1 was. I think it's hard to fully capture that exact spark of lightning once again. But I did have a good time seeing it, and I'm very much looking forward to how it'll conclude in the next year. I think it's building up to a pretty insane finale, so I'm very curious to see how that'll go down. I'm going to give Squid Game season 2 an A-. I'm happy with it. I genuinely am happy with it. I mean, again, I think there are those. Fully get if you don't agree with me, though. I fully understand that. And if you don't, that's totally fine. Hopefully season 3 brings it around. Guys, thank you very much for watching, and look forward to the best of 2024 dropping tomorrow. Finally, we're at the end of the year. I'm so excited to share that with you guys. I can't wait. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe. Thank you very much once again. And enjoy the show.